This episode of the Lewis Nichols Life Stories has been sponsored by Success Sculptors. Success Sculptors is dedicated to empowering businesses and entrepreneurs by offering valuable insights and actionable advice to drive your growth. Success Sculptors hosts events on a variety of themes designed to enhance your business's success, whilst also providing a platform to connect with like-minded professionals.
Hello and welcome to the Lewis Nichols Show in partnership with Mr. Cornwall, Shane Solomon, and I'm really excited to bring on our guest, Larry Lamb. Thank you for coming down.
You're welcome.
Have you had a good time so far in Cornwall?
Yeah, lovely. It's one of my favourite places to visit, and the weather's been reasonable, and I've been taken to a couple of lovely beaches and had a glorious swim. So, yeah, all is good.
And you're here with maybe the smallest studio audience you have had before, but we've got a small little studio audience.
There you go, an audience is an audience.
And we got a glass of fizz as well.
There you go. They don't get that in big TV jobs, tell you. So they're doing well.
So obviously with today's interview, what I wanted to do is kind of go back to the very beginning for you, which is kind of your childhood and growing up. And was kind of acting always something that you wanted to do? Because I know you kind of got into that a little bit later.
Yeah, it was nothing to do with my life at all. No, my life was survival and trying to escape the lunacy of my familial situation. So, no, acting, I wouldn't have known what an actor was, frankly.
So how did you get into that? So what?
By accident. I was living in Germany. I was working as a salesman with the American military over there. There were 1 million Americans and their families stationed in Germany after the Second World War. And they hired in London people to work as salesmen, and I got a job as a salesman and was chatting with somebody, and they told me that, they thought I should be an actor, and took me along to their drama club on the airbase where they worked and introduced me to the whole concept of amateur theatre. And the amateur theatre became a hobby, and the hobby took me, into different world, really, because the people that I was working with were not the sort of people that I'd met socially at all. And so I really got involved in it. I loved it. And then so I worked in little theatres wherever I was working. By this time I'd moved from being a salesperson. I'd gone into the oil business, and I was working in North Africa and Libya and a big oil town on the edge of the Mediterranean. And so I did a couple of little shows there. Then I emigrated to America and then finished up in Canada and was doing shows with a university in Canada. And then somebody told me that they were doing auditions for the local rep company. And I'd got to the end of the line as far as I was concerned with doing what I was doing. I'd achieved everything I wanted to achieve, and I jumped. I did an audition and I got lucky.
Wow.
Yeah.
The rest is history, as they say.
Yeah.
So for you, can you remember when your first kind of big break was? The moment that you made it on the TV and the excitement that came with it? Kind of what was the show and when was it?
Yeah, well, I don't know whether you'd call it, getting a principal role in a TV series is a big break.
Yeah. And
so that happened very early on. When I came back to England, I left America in 1977, in 77, yeah, in April 77, and came to England, but I already had an agent, so I started working, and they got me a job on the Superman films, the first two that they were doing, and so I had a job, and then I was very lucky with the people that I met, because the connections I'd made in Canada were enough to get me moving in the UK. And I started to work very quickly and got some TV work, which opened up into serious bits of work in the way of 2 TV series. There was one of them that was called Fox, which was like a 13-part series that we did on Euston Films what was it? Would have been 78, 79. And then I did that series Triangle, So, you're just looking to get noticed. That's what it is. And so I was noticed, and then work starts to come, and then it extended off into different stuff in Europe, and I just found myself working all the time.
You mentioned Triangle, and that was with Kate O'Mara.
Yeah.
And obviously someone that's worked in the industry for such a long time. So for someone that was quite new into the industry, was that kind of stimulating for you as an actor to work alongside someone like Kate?
Well, it was stimulating as a male, about stimulating as an actor. But, I got that all wrong. She was having none of that. But she was really lovely, and she accommodated the fact that I was, a leery youth suddenly appearing on the scene. But she was. And I mean, Kate O'Mara was she was fifth generation actor, so dealing with somebody like me was not quite her way, But she was very professional, and we got on really well. But this was the first time I'd played a sort of a romantic lead, and as she said one day, "Darling, we don't do tongues when we're kissing," and so you learn the hard way. You know what I mean? So
trying it on with Kate O'Mara.
Tell me.
We've got lots. I'm doing a little quiz later on about your own career, which will feature a lot of the shows that you've been in. But we've, of course, got to talk about Gavin and Stacey, which, when that came up, I mean, it just became massive. People just fell in love with the show. So how did your involvement in the show come about? Did you have to audition, or were you approached?
Yes, I did. I was in the West End at the time, and a set of scripts got dropped off at the stage door. Written by these two people I'd never heard of, James Corden and Ruth Jones. And I read the script, and I went in to do a sort of audition screen test, and Ruth Jones was reading the part that Alison eventually played. Although I think that was purely and simply because Alison wasn't available on the day they'd got me in, and because she was like part of it right from the beginning. And so I did the audition, and my agent phoned me, I don't know, a couple of hours later, and said, how did it go? And I said, well, I think it went quite well, but they liked me, but I don't think the director was convinced. And she said, oh, I'm sure you're wrong. Anyway, she phoned me an hour later, and she said, no, you're right. They did all like you, but the director is not convinced. But they want you to go back again in a couple of days and do it on camera with Alison playing the part she's going to play. So I did, and that was it. That's all it took. We did it, and we sort of knew each other. We'd been in something together years before. We have a big old mutual friend, so we'd met, socially before. And so, it was a difficult thing for Alison because, she'd had to do a couple of these auditions with people. And and then I was the lucky one. I got the part.
The great thing with you and Alison, though, is on TV sometimes you see some really good partnerships and it just works. And you see that with the both of you. You just have it. It's like natural. Did you feel that from the moment you filmed your first scenes, that this was going to work?
Yeah, I think the thing is that the writing is so right. It's so hot. It's so absolutely. Those characters, they give you those characters. You read the lines and the characters come. It's not left to you.
Yeah.
They've written these extraordinary parts, and then they've fitted an actor to them. Yeah. It's not the other way round, which is often the case. They'll fit the lines to the player. And so that's why, that's clearly, a lot to do with the success of it. I mean, just to have got those, to have got the couple, Matt and Joe, that play Gavin and Stacey, to get them so that you're really convinced those two people are madly in love. I have no idea how many people they saw for those parts. But to nail it to those two, and then so the audience, because if the audience isn't taken along with that love affair, you ain't got no show. Yeah. That's it. And so it was very, very clever the way they did it, but it's all from the writing. It was all on the page, and that's the thing. And so when we all sat in a room in Soho on the very first day around a table and everybody read it, then you knew this was something special.
Well, that's the thing. I think we can all agree. We all know an Uncle Bryn. We all know a Pam and Mick, where the wife's kind of always stressing and wanting them to be perfect. And then you have the husband reassures. We all know a Smithy. That's the thing. It's one of those shows where you can relate and actually almost, my neighbour's like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of one of the reasons for its success. But did you ever anticipate when you first read the scripts that it would become as big as it has? Because it's up there with Only Fools and Horses,
Well, the thing is, as an actor, you've got to be somebody who looks on the positive all the time. Everything you're going to do, you got to figure it's going to be a success.
Yeah.
And then you've got to face the fact that most of them are not.
Yeah.
And you've got to be in something that you think is going to be really good. And then when you look at it, you think, wow, what happened to that between the page and the screen? But this, as I say, once we read it, and I thought, this has clearly got something. And then I remember I was back in the theatre working at the National Theatre, and a guy was walking towards me, and he looked and he said, You're in that new thing there, that Gavin and Stacey, aren't you? And I said, yeah. Oh, he said, God, that's good. And then I thought, okay, this is registering with people. And then I got some phone calls from family and extended family sort of saying that they'd seen it and that, and not sort of people who are just fan people about everything. They're a bit selective, you know what I mean? And if you're in something and it's no good, you won't hear from them.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you're getting this positive feedback about something that you thought yourself might be good. And the BBC were very canny about it because they knew they would have to build a young audience. They started to leak it online before it ever went on the telly. And so kids were picking up on this thing early on. And then when it went on, BBC 3, and then it went to 2, and then it went to 1, you realise this was a ride that was going to go on,
Well, indeed it is, because the news is now official. Because, it was announced earlier this year that Gavin and Stacey was back for a final episode, and then Ruth Jones denied the rumours. But now they've both come out and said it's happening, and it's going to be the last ever episode. So
again, it's like those old rock and rollers that go around the world on their last tour. Well, that's sort of the last tour,
Do you think this is it?
Why? What you can do? Kill it?
Yeah.
What's the point? I bet you, right? I bet you it hangs on a cliffhanger. And they're too canny, those two, right? We could be rocking this thing out when I'm about 104. Although I always think maybe they'll start one of these looking down into a grave, and there I'll be in my box down the bottom. That's it. Sorry, couldn't make it for this one. Yeah, but no, it's part of millions of people's lives. It's really weird. I was up in the northeast a couple of weeks ago, and I was in the water having a swim, and there were a bunch of people in, and they were all out. And then there was a guy not too far from me, and we were both starting to walk up the sand and get out of the water. And so we started chatting, and I knew he had no idea who I was at all. And as we came out of the water, a couple came walking across the beach, and this woman, she just jumped. She said, "Why?" And the guy looked at me as much as say, "How on earth do you know people around here?" No idea. But
wow.
So many people, you're part of their life.
But when did you find out about this, that there was going to be a new episode. So how, because obviously they put it out last month.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing. Their main problem is the logistics. Are you going to be available? So if they phone you up and I've just signed a contract, I'm going to be working on something for a year. Well, like, what are they going to do? So it's like the first thing is a phone call shortly after Christmas. What's the deal? Are you going to be available through the summer, probably August time? Because we look like we're going to get a green light and doing something again. So, yeah, and everybody, because they've got to do it that far in advance.
Well, we all know it's going to be the most watched because the last one you did in 2019, the viewing figures, you haven't had that, I believe, since the Only Fools and Horses 2003 special. So it's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, the love for the show.
Yeah. Amazing.
Will we ever find out what happened on that fishing trip? Because that's the answer. We all want to know. It's gone on for so long.
I know. I think, yeah. Look, nobody knows. They're not going to tell anybody. They're not going to tell you that. That's one of those things that keep people going. That's like the long-running cliffhanger.
Yeah.
What happened on the fishing trip?
Going to keep us on our toes.
Yeah.
James Corden has had a tough time. Obviously, he's gone to America and he's huge, but he's just had a really tough time with the press, the media, and a lot of negative stuff about him. Do you think it's good that he's back home and he's working kind of with his friends and people that he's close to?
Look, James has been in this business a long time. He was a kid, and he's a very, very canny guy. So, somehow or other, something, it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. You can upset you. If you are somebody that plays a character that people love, you can upset a lot of people very quickly by saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. And clearly, that's what's happened. So, this is his home base.
Yeah.
This is where his talent grew and was nurtured, and he became what he is here, So I think it's a good thing that he's back here doing something that he loves and that he's very definitely created. So, yeah, I think it is good.
Well, from one big character to another, going back to 2008, obviously joining EastEnders as Archie Mitchell. Now, to join the show and go in one of the biggest, most loved families, the Mitchells. I mean, what was that like for you, just to be in the centre of that?
Well, the fortunate thing for me was I'd never seen EastEnders.
Wow, never?
No. What for?
I love it. You're missing out, Larry.
Well, I was in it for 2 years. No. The thing is, I was very lucky in that the story really worked for me within that family there. And, they were the kind of the dynamo, the driving force. So it was a really, real lucky break for me to be in there. Somebody who'd never seen the show. And, you then all of a sudden you're involved in it, but it's an acting job,
Yeah.
And it really is an acting job, because I tell you, when you're on camera in some of those scenes that are going to be watched by, in those days, probably half of the population of the country, it's like the pressure is on, and it worked really well for me. And I was lucky because I was in with a group of people that I really love working with. So, from somebody who'd never seen it,
Yeah.
I became like a really important central character within the story, and it was fantastic. I loved it.
Working with the late Barbara Windsor as well. I mean, she was just the icon of the show.
Yeah.
What was it like working closely with, and what was she like to work with?
Very small. But no, she was lovely. She's so tiny little thing. So we do these scenes, and I would literally have to bend over, and just walk. I remember we were doing this thing out in the street, and I quickly realised the thing to do was get her on the pavement and me on the road, walking through the square. And we just got on. We both, I mean, she was a little bit older than me, not a lot, but our backgrounds were very similar. We both love singing. We both love show songs. And so whenever there was a little moment, we would find ourselves singing little songs that we both knew. And sometimes she'd be saying, "Oh, I never heard that one." And then the other, and she'd sing something that I had never heard. And yeah, we had a lovely time together. She was great. She was really lovely. And she was kind of like the head girl there, you know.
Yeah.
And she made sure, because those things, you know, you get a group of people working together all the time under a lot of pressure often, and it can get a little bit on the cliquey side, but she made sure everybody was professional, and it didn't get like that.
Yeah.
And it was great to be a part of it. I absolutely loved it. I would have stayed there forever, but, you know, he had to be killed, old Archie. All the baddie boys, they have to be killed.
That's what I was going to ask. Obviously, he was such a big character in the show, so it wasn't your decision then?
Oh, no. They know you're going to die when you sign up.
Wow.
You don't know it, but they know it. So, you know, and then all of a sudden you get the word from the emperor to come and have a chat, an update with the boss up in the roof. And it's like, is it going to be this or is it going to be that? And sometimes you see somebody come down the stairs having had their meeting and it's been that. And one day you go up there and it's that. And they tell you, you know, 6 months from now, you're going to be on your way out. So that's it. But that you know, that's it. So you're like an actor. You're used to it. You move on, you know. You move on. What's the next gig?
The thing is with Archie Mitchell, though, he was such a complex villain. I mean, I don't think EastEnders has had a villain like that since. So what was that like for you as an actor to play such a complex character? Because some of the storylines that he was part of was quite shocking.
Yeah, but some of the storylines that you learned about happened after he was dead.
Yeah.
I wasn't taking charge of storylines that were invented once Archie was dead. They kept playing off the back of him. I just knew he was a complicated character that was having a relationship with this woman and his sort of stepson and the daughters, right?
Yeah.
And that was dealing with that. And it was all perfectly doable, perfectly understandable, and really well written. So yeah, there was no problem with any of that. But a lot of the stuff that you found out about him afterwards, that would have been a different kettle of fish entirely to play.
Well, we were talking on the earlier about Samantha Womack, of course, such an incredible actress. But Ronnie's character and Archie, that was very temperamental between them both. I mean,
yeah.
Ronnie had this hatred from previous trauma.
Yeah.
What was it like working with Samantha, and what did you think of the dynamics between Archie and Ronnie?
Yeah, well, the two of them, there was, you know, Samantha and Rita Simons, you know,
Yeah.
Ronnie and Roxy. So that was a real blessing, you know, to have these two extraordinary women playing these parts as my daughters.
Yeah.
And we just hit it off completely straight away, and continued to be, not close. We talk to each other now and again, but very close in terms of the relationship that was built up then. And they're just lovely, lovely girls. They're far wilder in real life than they were on the show, I have to tell you. That was very toned down.
Well, Roxy idolised Archie, didn't she? Archie was like Roxy's hero, and Ronnie had that kind of wanting to protect her younger sister. But the Who Killed Archie storyline was huge. I mean, that was massive. And like you said, it went on and on.
Yeah.
What did you think of that and being part of that? Because you were killed by the Queen Vic bust, pushed on top of you by Stacey, we found out.
Yeah. Well, frankly, once that had all been done, I was on to a different life.
Yeah.
Because towards the end of the time that I was there, the word came down from upstairs where the bosses were that the One Show wanted somebody to do a little film about their days at school. And so I said, well, I'd love to do that. And it worked out really well. And so I started to do jobs for the One Show. So I'd kind of moved on. So I certainly wasn't like watching everything that was going on with EastEnders at all. You know, you would talk to people now and again, and they tell you what they're finding out about you. And but yeah, it was you move on.
You know, Rita went back recently as a ghost.
Did she?
Yes. So Roxy came back as a character of a ghost. But one thing I got to talk to you about is, of course, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, because I loved the show, but I never expected to see you on the show, and I was so chuffed when it was announced. So what made you say yes?
Well, that's a good question. I think emotionally I was ready to do it. And another thing that I'd never watched, you know, but my family are absolutely devoted to it and never missed it ever. And I just didn't watch it. And they'd spoken to me about it a couple of times before, but it had never come to anything. And in the end, I thought, yeah, I think I could do this. I understood from particularly what my daughters had said about it. And I said to them, they've asked me to do this, and they said, oh yeah, do it. So kind of like it was a dare, really.
And then you did.
Yeah.
Is it because a lot of people think, behind the scenes that people go in and you're given meals and it's not as hard. Is it as tough as we see?
It's the one bit of reality television that I've been involved with that's absolutely truthful.
Wow. So is that tough?
Absolutely. There's no fakery. It's all, it's as you see it. I think it's so big and so complicated. If they started like playing tricks, they'd get caught out.
Yeah.
So what you see is what's going on. There's no extras of anything. You really do those things to earn these scraps of food that they lower down in the basket to you, and that nobody knows what they are. They're a part of something that you've never wanted to even look at when it was alive, let alone when it's dead. And then you've got to figure out how to cook it with virtually nothing, and then eat it. So yeah, and the fascinating thing for me was that I don't starve myself to death for sure. I eat, But what I realised there was that eating is a habit, because I just gradually stopped being interested in eating, whereas all the rest of the kids that were in the show, they would be lying around, and one would say, "Oh, if you were in Nando's now, what would you order?" They'd know the menu of Nando's off by heart. I mean, it was crazy. So yeah. And they'd tell what biscuit would you have now? All these all these foods that were part of their lives. And I found myself eating whatever we prepared and sort of looking at these poor starving kids and saying, look, you can finish mine. And they, oh God, are you really? And literally seeing, I remember Jordan Banjo, like picking up a grain of rice that I'd left on my plate, just anything, just to get an extra grain inside him, But yeah, it was... But I was lucky because I didn't have to drink any of those dreadful potions, because they kept volunteering, and I was don't volunteer for anything, just sit back and see what happens. So I found myself sitting around chopping logs half the time, and they're all off doing the Chinese. But yeah, but I found that a buzz, that thing. Yeah, I really liked it. It wasn't too hot. I thought it was going to be unbearably hot. And it wasn't. It's just the right point, it was warm. But now and again, I remember, I think the nastiest, I'm not really bothered by bugs and things. It did, like you'd think, well, the one thing I thought was, well, look, you might get bitten, but it's not going to be anything. You're not going to die of the bites, that you get from this. But they'd put half, maybe 5 of us or 6 of us in a jacuzzi full of cold water against a wall, which was a sun trap, and the sun was beaming down. And being in a jacuzzi with cold water is a bit of a spooky old feeling. It just didn't feel right. And then they were throwing bucketfuls of fish guts over the top of us. And then as well as that, just as sort of a finishing touch, they would throw these little bundles of very thorny bushes that would float on the water, but they were covered with these fire ants that will nip you as soon as they get you. And the idea was we had to duck dive and pick up these sort of stars, I think they were. And every time you got one of these, you were... And so, and this horrendous fish grease was formed all over the surface of the cold water. And every time, there were heads... There were heads, there were skeletons, there were everything was all chucked in there. They had a deal with a big fish filleting company somewhere, and everything all let out. They're all chucked in there with you. And because when you get out, you're covered in this grease, you're stinking from all the fish, and the first thing you want to do is stand you in the heat and do an interview with you, right? When all you want to do, and then you've got to go back to the place. You've got to walk all the way back to the place. And then you've got to get in the cold water and try and get it off. No hot shower or anything. I mean, you might have thought they would give you a hot shower in the way of sort of cheating it a bit. No, nothing. Get in this water, get in this cold water and try and rub it off. So it's absolutely as you think it is.
And then you arrive at the hotel to see your family without getting to wash and clean yourself up. The cameras are all there, but you have everyone else.
Well, no, but that's different. At the end of it, everybody, that's all done at a certain time when you're actually sort of sitting there ready. Everybody at that moment is potentially going to run out. That's it.
Yeah.
So you're already you're in your kit. You're not straight off the back of one of those things. I think they do it in the morning, So you've had a night's sleep and everybody's sitting there, and then then the axe falls.
Well, the next thing for you now, Larry, is we've got a quiz, but it's all about your career. So we got some questions to see what you remember of different characters that you played. We got 10 questions, and we're going to see how many you get right. So, what was your character's name in Rise of the Foot Soldier?
No idea.
What was you to guess? Mr.
No idea.
Mr. Harris.
Mr. Harris. Okay.
You starred as Ted Case in New Tricks, but for how many episodes?
12.
9.
Was it only
9? Yeah, 9.
9 episodes?
9 episodes as Ted.
Well, I got paid for 10.
Good. That's you played a football chairman, Mike Ross, but in what TV series?
Ah, yes, I know that. It's A Touch of Frost.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
The brilliance of David Jason. What was your character's name in The Bill?
Fox.
Yeah, Jonathan Fox.
Yeah.
In 1992, you starred as Gerald Summers in what show for 2 episodes?
1992.
And it was Gerald Summers, and it was for 2 episodes.
Don't know.
Lovejoy.
It's 2 episodes.
Yeah.
They only paid me for 1. But no.
They made up for it in the other show.
Episodes. Yeah, we went up to Scotland to do that.
The next one, in Gavin and Stacey, there was an episode in which everybody was waiting for Mick's big TV moment when he found a body. However, he only got a very small line. What did Mick say? So what was shown on the news from Mick?
Well, I'm paraphrasing probably. It's not exactly what you expect to see when you turn up to work.
Yeah.
Something like that. I've had so many people turn that line. I should remember it. Oh, the way. That's one of the favourite all-timers, that is.
In EastEnders, Archie had a relationship with another legendary villain. But who was that villain? She's known to be very scheming.
She is known.
Yeah.
Very scheming.
So they had a little romantic, brief relationship. Janine Butcher.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, Janine.
Janine, yeah.
Got you. I didn't quite get that one.
How many trials did you do on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here? So this surprised me because it's more than I think maybe you think.
Yeah, well, as I say, I'm lucky I didn't have to drink any of those filthy concoctions. I don't know, probably half a dozen.
So 5.
Yeah.
Just 5 trials.
Close enough.
A lot of them were with other people as well. So there's a few of you. In 2000, you starred in a British crime film alongside the brilliant Sean Bean. What was the name of the film?
That was the one where there was a couple that I did were very similar. What year was that?
2000.
2000. Oh, was it Essex Boys?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
And the final question is, in 2022, you took part in the Strictly Come Dancing Christmas special. Like, what dance did you dance to?
The American something.
American Smooth. Did very well as well. So what I'd like to do now, which I've not spoke to Shane about, but I think it'll be a good idea, is we open a couple of questions to the audience. If anyone has a question for Larry that you would like to ask, so we're gonna put you on the spot.
I'll tell you, a volunteer.
Shane's running out now because he's thinking, why has he done this? So we're gonna get a camera.
Get a camera on them.
But Larry, this is when do. So think of any questions that you've got for Larry Lamb and
make them easy, please.
Can I ask one? What is your most memorable moment of your career?
What? In television or theatre or what?
Just your career in general, the whole career.
Blimey. Memorable moment. I mean, that's a real difficult one. There have been so many. You know, the people that I worked with Bob Dylan. Wow. I met George Harrison of the Beatles. I worked for Prince Edward. I met a couple of times and then worked with Lauren Bacall. I spent months on the road with Alf Garnett or Warren Mitchell. I don't know. I don't know. You know, pick out of that. I really don't know. I have.
incredible.
You know, I'll be honest. I've been so lucky. You know, as an actor, and then the things that the acting took me into and places. You know, Prince Edward was he was running a television company, and I did a TV series called Annie's Bar for that company, and so they invited me and a producer woman to go to a meeting, and their offices in London were being redecorated. So we had the meeting in one of the reception rooms of Buckingham Palace, and so there was I, you know, and tea and biscuits was being served by a footman, having a meeting with Prince Edward about a TV series. It's just, and these are the ones that I can remember.
Wow.
So, you know, I just such a lucky boy who just bumbled into it by chance. Well, you choose which one.
Well, I think, what about Bob Dylan? What was the Bob Dylan?
But Bob Dylan was the sort of central character in a film called Hearts of Fire that was made by Lorimar back when they were making loads of money with Dallas and those sort of shows. And it was all about an old rock and roller that had come out of retirement. So it was a rock movie, and it had Rupert Everett was playing this kind of rock singer, and there was a scene they filmed down in Bristol at Colston Hall there, which was a concert this guy was giving, you know, the character that Bob Dylan was playing, and they had Richie Havens, they had Ian Dury, they had what's his name? I can't remember. But anyway, it was a big do. It didn't do any business at all. It was a definite flop. But yeah, so I played Bob Dylan's manager.
Incredible. What have we got? Any other questions that we can throw back to the audience? Anyone got any questions for Larry?
So I'm from Cornwall. All right, been here all my life. I've got business in Cornwall. I think my mum did our family tree, and we're something like 12 or 13 generations. So about as Cornish as you can get. You're in Cornwall. What's been your favourite bit?
I had a really wonderful pasty the first day I was there. Like I'd never eaten a pasty like that before. They never get down to London. They never get up to London, that's for sure. This was like really quite extraordinary. I was stunned. Yeah. But the beaches are beautiful. Yeah. And you know, I'm a swimmer, and so to go swimming on a beautiful clean beach in seawater that's not contaminated, it's a joy. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is wonderful.
Anybody else? We're all good with the questions. Thank you very much. Well, Larry, what's next for you now? Obviously, we know about the Christmas special, but have you got any other projects that you're going to be working on?
Well, I've just finished 3. It's funny, I only play old men nowadays. So I just played 3 old men in a line. One for a series that's called Curfew. And so that will be, I'm sure it will be up before the end of the year. I play a really irascible old man in that. And then I played an old man in a series that's been running for a couple of years called Whitstable Pearl. And then I just played another old man for a new series called The Feud. And that'll be on. I think there's going to be 3 of these old men knocking around before the end of the year. I'm going to get shown up. Holy shit, all of them.
Well, Larry, honestly, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to actually meet you. I mean, I've spoke to you many times over the years. We've done it over the phone, interviews, but to actually be here in person and talk about your career has been a pleasure. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody for coming as well.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
This episode of the Lewis Nichols Life Stories has been sponsored by Success Sculptors. Success Sculptors is dedicated to empowering businesses and entrepreneurs by offering valuable insights and actionable advice to drive your growth. Success Sculptors hosts events on a variety of themes designed to enhance your business's success, whilst also providing a platform to connect with like-minded professionals.